was in Boston, so I didn't really necessarily watch the draft live, but I know when that pick 51 was coming up, I know you were getting a little antsy. Can you give me a little bit of what your reaction was when you saw all this kind of unfold a little bit on that second day?
Yeah, we had talked about a number of guys that we had hoped would fall to that pick 51 selection, and it seemed like a handful of the guys that we were targeting, at least us as fans, and this trio of individuals right here on our last live stream. A few of those guys were there at pick 51, and I thought, oh man, we're going to walk away with one of the guys that we wanted, and then the Cam Smith pick gets made, and I'll admit I was a little disappointed when that pick got made. Now, since I've had time to digest it and really kind of dig into why the pick was made. And you got aging corners in Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey, even though you just acquired Jalen Ramsey. And eventually these guys are going to need replaced. I was hoping to add a player who could help the Dolphins a little bit more right now, shore up that offensive line like you were talking about, Kat. There's clearly a need in that tight end room. And there were a couple guys there that I thought might be worth the pick. So I was a little bit disappointed when the pick was initially made at pick 51. But I got over it quickly, and I've been able to see how Cam Smith can help this defense and really just kind of see what kind of a player he is. And he looks like a quality talent, nice sticky coverage out there, real aggressive dude. And he's kind of got that swagger about him. And hopefully that ends up being a good thing for the Dolphins and not a bad thing. But when you got that veteran leadership on the defensive side of the ball and then Vic Fangio calling the shots, you think he'll probably be able to keep his head on straight there. So,
Kat, I want to ask you because in South Carolina, it was a lot of man coverage, and that's where Cam Smith was very. That's where his instincts really shined, right? Some people said he'd, run routes better than the wide receiver would. It might have even been Marek who said that in our group chat. But how does that kind of unfold in a Vic Fangio scheme defense, where I kind of have a feeling where he could be a pretty instinctual slot guy early on, be physical inside the box for the team, even though that wasn't his preferred technique, his preferred defense in college. I do feel like that transition goes pretty smoothly if you're going to try to throw him in and slot early in his career.
Yeah, so I view him as only a zone cornerback, not man to man at all. Because, and you look at South Carolina, if you look at the snaps that he played, it was almost right down the middle, half man, half zone. So he has seen both things. But when I look at him as a prospect, I see him as a player who plays far better facing the ball than with his back to the ball. And I don't think he would have been considered anywhere in the draft in previous years because I didn't view him as a Josh Boyer or Brian Flores type of cornerback. I think in this zone defense under Vic Fangio, I think he's a phenomenal fit. Offensive line was by far the biggest need on the team. I thought tackle was 1 and guard was 2. So that's where I wanted them to go. But I was never against them taking a cornerback. I said that before the draft because, look, if Cam Smith comes in here, let's say he doesn't beat out Cater Kohu for the 3rd cornerback job, but he beats out Nick Needham for the 4th. He's going to be your 6th defensive back. He's going to get on the field for 250 plus snaps. If there's an injury, which there probably will be, you're looking at 300 to 400 snaps probably at least. So I think he will get on the field quickly. And as far as Cam Smith as a player, every negative against him seems to be against him as a man coverage corner, not a zone guy. He's got great length. He has very good twitch for being 6'1". He follows his eyes. He marries his feet with his eyes. I think he's a fantastic pick for this type of scheme.
When you mention his weakness, I think it's though if we had to describe in one word, maybe panicky. When he figures out that things might not be in his control, he has a tendency to grab. But Marek, I want to ask you, when we look at that depth chart, and I know this is a little bit of lazy analysis, but I'm curious, when you kind of put it into the idea of Madden rankings, right? Just like a number next to a name, where would you see Cam Smith fitting in, and how quickly can he leapfrog, Trill Williams, Nick Needham, 2 guys coming off of injury, Cater Kohu stepped up, but he is an undrafted guy. They weren't expecting to get much out of him. So where does he kind of wind up, maybe even early on?
Well, there's been rumblings about Trill Williams moving to safety, so he might not even have to compete with Trill Williams in the cornerback room if that's the case. And Nick Needham is coming off of that pretty serious injury from last season, and that's an injury that takes a little bit of time to come back from. So you could very well, like Kat was saying, you could very well see him slide right into that fourth corner position almost immediately, and have the opportunity to beat out Cater Kohu for that number 3 position in the cornerback room. Cater was an undrafted free agent. He played admirably for the Dolphins last season, but Cam Smith, obviously a little bit higher of a pedigree there. So if he's able to come in and really impress early on, I wouldn't be shocked if Cam Smith eventually, as the season progressed, made his way all the way up to that starting slot corner position. It's totally possible.
Brian, what does a defense look like with these 4 guys out there at cornerback? To me, I remember Cater Kohu was awesome, but he kind of struggled once he was kind of brought into the box. I think he could be washed out a little bit. So for me, I kind of see X and Kohu as your boundaries, while Smith and Ramsey, who Ramsey said himself, he's a defensive back, he's not a cornerback. Those are your 2 guys hanging out in the box, and they're heavy hitters, and I think they can kind of help in the running game, even if you do play like a dime defense.
Certainly. And yeah, that's the thing. Jalen Ramsey with the Rams last year, 1 out of every 3 plays, he was either playing in the slot or in the box. And according to people who have watched the Rams a lot more closely than I do, he played far better inside than he did on the outside. Makes sense. I mean, he's an instinctive giant player. So if you have Cam Smith and Cater Kohu as the options when you go to 3 defensive backs to cover, to have, if you have Cam Smith or Kohu opposite Xavier Howard with Ramsey in the slot, that makes things all the more better. And the flexibility to move Jalen Ramsey inside, to me, is the most important part of the Cam Smith pick.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. Hey, Marek, you got any final thoughts on Cam Smith before we switch over to the offense?
Oh man, I really like, he's kind of a slender dude, but he's tall. Like he's got some size, he's got some length on him. So I really like that you're adding I don't want to say big body, but a long body to that room. And like I said earlier, he's kind of got that swagger about him. He's got that tenacity. So hoping to see more of that brought to this defense. A little bit of a ball hawk too. He always seems to find himself in the play. A lot of passes defensed and interceptions for him. So, excited for the pick. Hopefully he makes a contribution this upcoming season. We talked about adding these impact players early because the Dolphins are kind of in a win now mode. They've got a 2-year window with Tua Tagovailoa still on his rookie deal, and then the 5th-year option. So hoping for an immediate impact from Cam Smith. We'll see if we get it.